Boruto Chapter 75 dropped a lot of bombshells, and the biggest one was the reveal of Shibai Otsutsuki. This guy came out of nowhere and left us asking so many questions about who he is, where he is, what's his connection to Amado, and how did Eida and Daemon's powers come from this dude who doesn't even have their dojutsu. So today I want to show you the crazy revelations you get just from thoroughly examining this guy's name, which will bring some of you guys back on the Boruto hype train. So as you probably know, many characters in Naruto and Boruto have a deeper meaning behind their names, either because their name is a word that means something important, or they are named after a character in mythology or a folktale that inspired the Naruto character and their abilities, or both, and Shibai might fall into the both category. Starting with the word Shibai itself, since the mythology part has a lot more substance to it, Shibai can translate to a play, acting, lies, yes, pretentious, or hypocritical depending on the context. While these translations aren't all exactly the same, they are pretty similar and they all have the same thing in common, which is conveying that something is not what it seems, that something is not real, or that something is not true. A play is not real, it's just people acting as characters in a story. Acting means you are behaving in a way that is not your true self, you are just pretending or being insincere, like acting in a play. Lying means you are not telling the truth. BS is just a slang way to say something isn't true. Pretentious means to impress by pretending to have some sort of greater importance, talent, culture, or whatever than you actually possess, which is just a specific form of acting. And hypocritical means to behave in a way that suggests you have higher standards or more noble beliefs than whatever you actually do have, which again is pretty much just another form of acting. The most interesting aspect about the word Shibai, though, is how it is so fitting for Amado, who is very well known to the fandom for being a sasibaka, who's always being shady, withholding information, acting, and sometimes lying. Even in Chapter 75, Momoshiki thinks that Amado might be lying, and we all think Amado withheld some information, and possibly lied too. And it felt like Amado was kinda acting and pretending to break down crying in Chapter 76. We'll circle back to the meaning of the word Shibai later in the video, but it could be a hint that something about Shibai is not real, and instead is a lie or an act. Whether that's something Amado said about Shibai, something about Amado's acting, or something about Shibai's character. Shibai or Amado could be pretending to do something or be someone that they are not, or something like that. Only time will tell though. Now, this alone is pretty interesting, but is Shibai also named after someone or something? It wouldn't be out of the ordinary, as every single Otsutsuki before Shibai was named after a character from a popular Japanese folktale, and their abilities were inspired by those same folktales. Where Kaguya was named after Kaguya Hime, or Princess Kaguya, Momoshiki after Momotaro, Kinshiki after Kintaro, Urashiki after Urashimataro, and Isshiki after Isshin Boshi. But Shibai is weird. Not only is the only male Otsutsuki we've heard of whose name doesn't end in Shiki, he's also not named after a character from a Japanese folktale. Believe me, I tried searching for a while, and I could not find a single folktale with a character whose name was remotely close to Shibai, or remotely similar to what we know about Shibai's character. But given Kishimoto's penchant for using Hindu, Buddhist, and Shinto mythology and folktales in his writing and characters, I really can't see Shibai being the only Otsutsuki not based on some sort of mythology or folktale. So if he's not based on a Japanese folktale, we need to look somewhere else, which would be Hindu, Buddhist, or Shinto mythology. So shout out to Tyson in the comments for introducing me to this idea and explaining some of the language mechanics behind it back in my Chapter 75 review video, but the answer might be the Hindu god Shiva. Obviously, Shiva is not the exact same name as Shibai, but Kishimoto doesn't have to copy the name exactly to name somebody after a character. Like, Momoshiki is not the same word as Momotaro, and Isshiki is not the same word as Isshin Boshi, and so on. But they're clearly based on those characters. So Kishimoto could have easily just taken the name Shiva, which becomes Shiba in Japanese, and then just threw the letter I at the end because he didn't want to copy it exactly, and also so it could be the word Shibai, that means acting or lies. So I did my research.
Research. Yes, research.
On Shiva for a while, and I found a ton of super interesting stuff that just made everything click together in my mind. It got me super excited to make this video. And it all started with just what Shiva looks like. Remember how Eida Senrigan is supposedly a Shinjutsu power that Eida inherited from Shibai? Not only does Shiva have 3 eyes and long hair like Shibai, but the dude has a crescent moon on his head, which is the main symbol in Eida Senrigan. I saw this, I got super interested. It's still kind of confusing how the Senrigan comes from Shibai based on the image we saw of him in chapter 75, but this crescent moon thing with Shiva was just too relevant to be a coincidence, and things just get more and more interesting. Shiva is part of the Trimurti alongside Vishnu and Brahma, who are basically the 3 main gods of Hindu mythology. So they're the big dogs, where Brahma is known as the creator, Vishnu the preserver, and Shiva the destroyer. Shiva destroys the universe, not out of malicious intent or anything, but to allow for a new cycle of creation, and he's also known for destroying kama or karma, as well as destroying death or yama. There's even a Hindu god named Kamadeva that Shiva turned to ash with his 3rd eye. This fits with Amado's hypothesis that Shibai evolved to a point where he no longer needed karma, resurrection, or vessels because he ascended to a higher dimension where a physical body isn't needed. Meaning that Shibai has defeated both death and the need for karma, like Shiva did. And while at first it might seem a little odd that Shibai would be named after a Hindu god, while the other Otsutsuki are named after Japanese folktale characters, it's actually not as weird as you might think, and it's actually pretty fitting. Shibai is already the odd one out among the Otsutsuki so far. He's the only male Otsutsuki whose name doesn't end in shiki, and Amado talks about him as if he's evolved beyond that of an Otsutsuki, ascending into godhood, which seemingly not many Otsutsuki are able to achieve. Momoshiki also says something weird about Shibai in chapter 75, which is that he was an Otsutsuki. Momoshiki said that Amado was right about Shibai being in another dimension, so he seems to be confirming that Shibai is not dead. So why was Momoshiki using past tense when talking about Shibai then?
Why?
He either meant that Shibai was no longer an Otsutsuki because he became a god instead, he's no longer Shibai because he changed his name when he became a god, both, or something else. If Shibai is no longer considered an Otsutsuki, then I guess it's not that weird for him to not have Shiki at the end of his name and not be based on a Japanese folktale, since he wasn't introduced to us until after he became a god. And since he's supposed to be a god, being named after a god who happens to be one of the main gods of Hindu mythology makes a lot of sense too. Furthermore, something really cool I noticed about Naruto and Boruto is that when it comes to a character's name coming from mythology or a folktale, Kishimoto always either uses a character from a Japanese folktale, like with Kaguya, Momoshiki, Kinshiki, Orishiki, Isshiki, Jiraiya, Orochimaru, Tsunade, and so on, or he uses a Hindu or Buddhist god or mythology, like with Indra, Ashura, the various paths of pain, and possibly Shibai. Then when it comes to several jutsu in Naruto and Boruto, Kishimoto instead uses Shinto gods for the names of these abilities, such as Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi, Susanoo, Izanagi, Izanami, Kodowa Matsukami, Takami Musubi no Kami, Daikoku Ten, Sukuna Hikona, Flying Raishin, and so on. Maybe there are some exceptions to this, but as far as I know and as far as I can think of, Shinto gods are used exclusively for jutsu, while Japanese folktales, Hindu gods, and Buddhist gods are used exclusively for character names, as well as other mythology aspects. I think that's really cool, and it's actually pretty important. Daikoku Ten is a Japanese god that originates from Shiva and wields the same wish-granting mallet called the Uchide no Kazuchi that's used in the Isshin Boshi story to bring Isshin from 1 inch tall to full size. He's not the exact same deity as Shiva, and there's several differences between them, but that's okay. Daikoku Ten is also a jutsu in Boruto that Isshiki uses with his unnamed dojutsu that Shibai also appears to have. So if the jutsu Daikoku Ten originated from Shibai because Shibai had the eye first, and Isshiki just inherited it from Shibai or acquired it later on or something, then it so nicely fits how the Japanese deity Daikoku Ten originated from the Hindu god Shiva. Things just get more and more interesting though. Mahakala is a particular form of Shiva in Hinduism, and it's also the name of the Buddhist version of Shiva, where Mahakala's name means beyond time or beyond death, which is also fitting for Shibai, who appears to have transcended beyond death and the effects of time. He's also known as the Dharma Protector in Buddhism, where Shibai and Ishiki's unnamed dojutsu takes on the appearance of the Dharma wheel when the eye is fully evolved. And in Hinduism, Mahakala is considered a fierce manifestation of Shiva, and there's also many forms of Mahakala. And the name Daikoku Ten is supposedly the Japanese equivalent to the name Mahakala. Mahakala is also occasionally described as a dimension of Shiva, which I found interesting in relation to Shibai ascending to a higher dimension. That's just some background on Mahakala, but here's where things get really cool. Supposedly, there's a symbol of Mahakala that is common in Japan, and take a wild guess what that symbol looks like when you look it up. Pause the video and leave a comment right now what your guess is before I show you. So search Mandala of Mahakala or symbol of Mahakala in Google Images, and all of a sudden you see the Jashin symbol all over the place. I'm not making this shit up, look it up for yourself. There's two main symbols you'll see. The most common one is the triangle inside a circle, which is the same as the Jashin symbol, and there's a couple squarish shaped ones, and a few that are kind of like a combination of the two, but the triangle Jashin-like symbol is the most common one. I don't know if I can call it a coincidence that the symbol of Mahakala is the same as the Jashin symbol Hidan always drew, and the same as the symbol in Amado's lab in chapter 34, where Shibai might be named after Shiva, who's the same person as Mahakala, and Amado talks about Shibai pretty highly and kinda gives off Shibai worshipper vibes, if he isn't a vessel for Shibai instead. I don't know if Jashin is who Shibai became when he became a god and entered a new dimension, if he's just a form of Shibai, if he's just an alias for Shibai like Tobi was for Obito, if he was Shibai's partner back in the day, or what, but our suspicions of a Jashin and Shibai connection are definitely warranted after seeing all this stuff, on top of the other reasons people have been talking about like Amado's Jashin symbol, Jashin being a god who granted Hidan powerful abilities for being a devout Jashinist, and how Hidan's jutsu has some similarities with Daemon's reflection jutsu and so on. And then when you tie in the meaning of the word Shibai itself, the acting or lies part might have to do with Amado's acting, Amado holding Shibai's secret in spirit, Shibai acting as Amado if he's actually controlling Amado, Shibai pretending to be a god when he isn't really an actual god, something to do with this potential Shibai and Jashin connection, some combination of these options, or another option that I didn't think of yet. Now, the last thing I'll mention is that since Shiva is part of the Trimurti of Hindu gods, which also includes Vishnu and Brahma, it's possible that they might introduce one or two more godlike beings to represent Vishnu and Brahma. Most notably Vishnu, as he and Shiva are worshipped more and have more temples dedicated to them than Brahma does. Furthermore, this could probably become a video topic in of itself, but there's a symbol of Vishnu's chakra that either looks like Sasuke's Mangekyo Sharingan design, or one of the Civil War flags from Naruto the Last, depending on the image you're looking at, where one of those war flags was this sun-like symbol with 8 points, similar to Vishnu's chakra symbol, and then the other one is the Senrigan crescent moon symbol, and Shiva wears a crescent moon on his head. So they actually might have been using Hindu mythology to inspire the plot of that movie, because the Crescent Moon team wanted to destroy Earth to recreate it like Shiva does, whereas the Sun team wanted to preserve the Earth like Vishnu does. Whether they implement a rivalry between Shiva and Vishnu in the story as Shibai versus some other guy remains to be seen, but it does feel like they've been implementing some of these elements in the story. So we might see Vishnu and Brahma counterparts as other godlike beings at some point in the story. But regardless of that, I think the Shibai and Shiva comparison is warranted, and the Jashin and Mahakala comparison is also warranted. And the word Shibai, meaning acting or lies, is also something to take note of. And with more information, we might be able to piece everything together before it all gets revealed. I want to hear what you guys think though. Do you think Kishimoto is using the meaning of the word Shibai to mean anything for Shibai or Amado's characters? Do you think Shibai is named after and based on the Hindu god Shiva? Do you think Kishimoto is using both the word Shibai and the god Shiva to inspire Shibai's character? Do you think Jashin is connected to the specific form of Shiva known as Mahakala, who's also the Buddhist equivalent of Shiva? Do you think Shibai and Jashin are connected? Were you surprised to see the Jashin symbol appear as a symbol for the god Mahakala? Do you think we'll see some more godlike beings inspired by Vishnu and Brahma and maybe some other Hindu gods? And did any of this get you a little bit more hyped about the Boruto story moving forward? Let me know what you think about all those questions in the comment section below, but that's a wrap on today's video, so thank you guys for watching until the end. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, like the video, become a member, and hit the bell icon for notifications. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.